Miss Liz, tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. Yeah, Miss Liz, tea time, yeah. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz. Tea time, making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, good morning and welcome back to Tea Time with Miss Liz. That's right, Miss Liz is back. I took a whole week off after 87 tea times. I think I needed a break, so I am back, and I have a returning guest in the studio with me this morning. I have Gerald Everett Jones joining me all the way from Hollywood. That's right, we're going to be talking Hollywood stuff. We're going to talk romantic comedies. We're going to talk all that good stuff, and we're going to get an update of where he is since he came on last season in season 3. And we're going to talk about his new novel called Mick Moira and Brad. And we're going to talk about some comedy and all of that good stuff. So we're going to get started, and we're going to do a disclaimer and bio, and then I'm going to get Gerard in here, and we're going to spill a good strong tea with you this morning. But before we get started, don't forget, grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your juice, eat your breakfast. Breakfast is important every day for all of us to get started on a fresh new day. So the disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz, myself, is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to see your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forward in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogue and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk, and it is significant to know that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in today's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you find that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect your wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all tea times this year in 2023 are done on a Thursday, 10, 3, and 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Unless it is a rescheduled show, then it's a Monday or Tuesday. So now let me get Gerard in here, and let me get him to share a little bit about this incredible novel that he just wrote. And a little bit about Gerard. He lives in Santa Monica, and he's going to be talking about Mick and Moira and Brad in his award-winning 13th novel. He is a board member of the Independent Writers of Southern California, IWOSC, a Film Independent FLILM fellow, and a winner of the Writers Guild of America, WGA. I'm sure I didn't say that right. And Diversity Award. He has held a Bachelor's of Arts with honors. Let me see. We got a little bit of glitches here. Honors from the College of Letters, Wesleyan University, where he studies under novelist Peter Boynton. And for furthermore on Gerard, you can check out Miss Liz's Facebook page. Now let me get Gerard in here. Let me get a sip of tea. My tongue is doing something weird again. Let's go here. Good morning, Gerard.
Good morning. Good morning. You know, I listened to your disclaimer, and I will say I'm not a lawyer, but I expressly reserve the right to play one on TV.
Well, that is good to know.
But not during the strike.
Yeah, that strike has got a lot of people.
Oh,
right.
We're on the brink of change, certainly, and we're right on the edge of what media is, what media does, how we use it, and of course, you're right in the middle of the storm here. One might call it gentle breeze on some days, but it's, as we were discussing in the green room, things are just it's a whirlwind these days. It's changing so fast.
It really is. It's moving way too fast. Like we were saying in the back room before we went live, is, you know, it's just moving fast. And I think that's what's scaring a lot of people. It's too much change at once, right?
And on so many fronts, in so many aspects of our lives. And one of the things I think that we find comforting, if you will, engaging about comedy is that comedy is an attitude. Comedy is looking at the world with a kind of, it's almost a cynicism. It's almost, you know, stuff happens.
And you got to just laugh about it, right? If you don't laugh, how do you get through it all? There's just so much that, you know, we need a little giggle once in a while. So
readers, we learn, you know, writing 101, I would say, when you're talking about comedy, is you need to find that engine of comedy. And that goes back to writing 101 and just writing stories in general, and goes back to, I guess it's Aristotle, of conflict is drama.
Yeah.
Okay, so as one screenwriting professor once expressed to me, no one wants to see the Village of the Happy People.
Right?
And
we don't want happiness. We don't want peace on earth.
There was actually a movie, Village of the Happy People, you know, and they stayed happy for about 2 scenes.
Third scene, that's it. Let's just do the real thing here. We ain't happy. So, Gerard, what has happened since you've been on Teatime last?
Well, this book came out in, what was it? January. This is, it's interesting that the inspiration for this particular book, and I had done a series of romantic comedies before, actually my first 3 novels. This one was my 13th novel, but the first 3 were coming of age, what in a prior age might have been called skirt chasing. You know, boy lust for girl, you know, complications ensue. And so there were a series of 3. There was My Inflatable Friend, which had to do with dressing up a life-size doll to look like a famous star to make his girlfriend jealous. He was a car jockey. He would drive the doll around town. And of course, the complication was that the press, the paparazzi, fell for that. They thought there really was something going on there. And that became a problem. That, you know, that's like, careful what you ask for. And again, here you go, engine of comedy. Careful what you ask for. Well, yep. What happens when you suddenly, you know, get what you ask for? The second one was called Rubber Babes, which had to do with the happy ever after. And, you know, they talk about the dog who finally caught the car. Well, you know, he you know, spoiler alert, he got the car, the girl, and they hooked up, and so then again they were happy for about 2 scenes. And then the third one in the series was called Farnsworth's Revenge, where it seemed as though the doll was safely in the closet or hidden away. And this fellow's boss, his manager at the hotel, this crusty old fellow, had secretly developed a fixation for the doll, and so this was a problem when suddenly it went missing. So somebody had stolen this. And then I ran across a newspaper article, and actually it was in RT, the Russian media, and there was a supposedly, and who knows whether this is fake news or not, but
yeah, right.
But there was a Russian bodybuilder who was petitioning the government for permission to marry his life-size sex doll.
Well, there we go, right? We've heard it all.
Well, we have enough trouble with living, breathing folks, trying to decide what it is how they want to express themselves and what makes them happy. But here we are. And actually, this was one of the things that happened during that series was, even in the first book, it was a quote, one might say it was a clean romance, although the subject matter certainly had to do with lust and passion and skin, whatever. There was nothing graphic in it, but I would say that one of the things that I discovered was that this guy had to spend a lot of time with that rubber babe, and it turned out that conversation was the one intimacy that persisted.
Wow.
That was the bond. It turned out at a point, it was the only thing that he could really talk to. He was an introvert by definition. If he had known.
Yeah, but the rubber doll couldn't argue back either.
Agreement here. How does any psychiatrist make money, right?
Right.
Other than playing the recording. How do you feel about that? Okay. So yeah, and so since that series, I wrote some historical fiction, some literary fiction. I have a mystery series that's really done very well. That's won some awards. The Preacher Evan Wycliffe mystery series, and that is what we would call an amateur sleuth. Okay, he's a preacher in southern Missouri, and some of the books, actually, the final book actually occurs during COVID. He actually gets drafted into the pastor of the church where he's been guest preacher retires, and he's actually got to take over the congregation. So he has to end up doing compassionate visits during COVID, and marry people on Zoom, preside over funerals and this kind of thing. But the engine there has to do, again, with amateur sleuth, is that people bring him, in this small farm town, people bring him problems that no one else has any interest in solving.
Wow.
And so where would you go?
Yeah.
Your priest, your rabbi, your counselor, your shrink, your guru, whoever it is that you can confide in, that rubber doll. Okay. We need somebody, a way to bring it outside ourselves so we can hear ourselves think. And we do on your Teatime. We can hear ourselves think.
Well, we think we can.
we were also talking about rambling conversation and about how one topic leads to the other. And, here I am in my therapy session, and I thought I was going to complain about this. And then I realized that, it's all about my father.
Right? I didn't know that was kind of come out of me today.
Rest his soul. Well, and of course, that's what I'm, presumably, that might be one of the purposes or benefits of therapy, is that we begin to realize, oh, this is what I need to get past.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's another writing coach kind of thing is, and we're going back to Aristotle and drama, and one form of drama is argument. Okay. Mm-hmm. And one of the really most useful writing tips I ever got was begin the conversation with a disagreement about an action and make it go to an argument of a fundamental dispute about values.
Okay.
Now, you might be surprised to know that really works for comedy.
Really?
And so you've got a couple, okay, be they live-ins, be they married, be they two folks in the assisted living facility, okay. The disagreement about an action is, where should we go to dinner?
Oh, well, that starts an argument all the time in this house.
And the dispute about values at the end of the scene, when you cut to the next, is, you never loved me.
Wow.
Now, if you've ever been in a relationship for any length of time, you know any number of ways how to get from where shall we go to dinner to you never loved me. Along the way will be, you never listened to me, you never respected me.
That is so true, because it is like that in this house too.
You're a vegan, I'm a carnivore. I mean,
yep.
And that's another thing that's changing very fast is our diets and what people tell us is healthy. So yes, and so I got to the point where I don't know maybe it was COVID, because I began to write this one. I'd written the last mystery, Preacher Raises the Dead, was written during COVID and as we were coming out of it. And actually I was moving back from Africa at the time, which I think we must have discussed last time, because I had just come back. And I was ready for that attitude shift, that attitude adjustment, because I joke that we came back from Kenya because things got interesting there, but then of course it was the beginning of COVID and the beginning of a new level of political strife here, and things got so much interesting here.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that necessarily in a good way. So I definitely needed a break in the action. I needed to change my attitude. And I was watching, I really got fond again of pre-code Hollywood movies that were made in the 1930s, before there was a lot of censorship. And especially like the Lubitsch comedies, and some of the movies then that even through the code George Cukor directed, and the engine of comedy between the Thin Man couple, okay, the bickering, but the friendly. These were people who had a good time being with each other. They weren't throwing things. Yeah. They weren't they weren't at each other's throats. Nobody was fantasizing about plunging a knife into the other one. It was we're enjoying life together, but how do I tell you, that dress is just
that dress is horrible,
and so there's that, and then there also Tracy and Hepburn. They were, I guess they were never married. They were lovers in real life, and that was when he was married, and it was a complication kind of situation, and not necessarily lighthearted at various times. But I mean, on screen, one of my favorite scenes, and it's in Adam's Rib, where they're a married couple, and they're both attorneys, and he's representing the prosecution, she's the defense, I think it is, or is, I don't really even remember maybe a divorce case, I'm not really sure, but it probably is a divorce case for the comedy. But they've got kind of a regular transaction, which is they give each other massages. Okay, and this is post code, so you've got to be kind of careful about how you shoot that.
Yeah.
But they've had a difficult day in court, and he's giving her a massage, and at one point he gives her a smart slap on the bum. And she says, "You meant that. You did that in anger. What, why don't you just tell me that you're pissed off at me?" I mean, and the thing is that she had scored on him in court that day, and he was supposed to be the veteran prosecutor with the thick skin, the guy who knew his way around, the guy who could talk any jury, into his point of view. And so they finally stand up, and they're having their argument, and the scene ends, and she kicks him in the shins. Okay, so again, we've gone from a disagreement about an action, you slapped me,
yep,
to take that, you bastard. Okay,
yeah,
but again, that could be a genuinely disruptive argument in a real relationship. But in comedy here, we're seeing it in the script and we're going, oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd do that too.
Get you in the shin.
This happened yesterday. So I was wondering about, there's another picture of that they did together called Pat and Mike. And he is he's a sports agent, and she is a college sports instructor, athletics instructor. But she is incredibly talented at golf. And although her boyfriend puts her down, okay, he and a different fellow. And Spencer Tracy happens to see her play golf and goes, this is a professional. This is talent. Now he manages prize fighters and horse race jockeys. It's the logic of Hollywood that he thinks that he can represent somebody on the golf tour, but he begins to represent her, and I realized, here's an engine. But I began to think about, and this was a big theme with it, what do those relationships, like the relationships in the 1930s Hollywood pictures, the friendly, sexually charged, amusing relationships, what do those relationships look like in the era after Me Too, when it seems as though we just can't get along? It's like, I mean, you read that disclaimer at the beginning of the show. It's like, okay, if we're going to date, do I read you? Okay, now I will always ask permission if I want to put my hand on your leg. Okay. Yep. I mean,
well, back in the day, we called that flirting.
Isn't there? Well, but
I like you, so I'm going to touch your leg.
It might be unwanted, and it truly might be unwanted. But I mean, isn't it incumbent on the other person to say, okay, here's a line, I don't want you to cross it, and and actually state that in some way that that is even a horny dude can understand. Okay, yeah. So I was thinking about that, and so the engine of drama comedy in this book is that Moira Halimi Joubert, who is a Moroccan American, French Moroccan American, is and back to Adam's rib, she is an attorney. She is a criminal defense attorney. So we're talking about a post-Me Too feminist who is not scared of anything, presumably. Okay, she's a fighter for a living. Okay, and yet she's number one, a very talented tennis player, because she was on the team at UCLA in college. But also she'd studied opera, and that's her real passion. And we've all gone through phases in our career where, this is my day job, but this is what I would rather do.
at my nighttime.
Okay. Am I, and of course, what's my T? Am I living my passion, or am I helping somebody else deliver their passion? And I'm just, this is a work for hire. So after a tennis match, a rich patron lady who's been their doubles opponent. She and her boyfriend, her hedge fund boyfriend Brad, overhears Moira singing in the shower, and she says, and she's singing opera. And she realizes this is not just anybody singing in the shower. This is somebody who's really got a voice and some training. And so as she hands her the towel, she says, you should meet my friend Mick. Mick, the Hollywood agent. And I can't even go out with my friends to karaoke. I have to have a couple of drinks before I can even get on the stage. It's not that I'm afraid, but it's like I'm out of practice. I'm an amateur. And well, what I heard is not. So she goes over, decides she'll take that meeting with Mick, and there's a meet cute with Mick. And it turns out that at the agency, now this is what's called a Hollywood packaging agency.
Oh.
A big agency in Hollywood not only books the star, but they book the director, the producer, the music director, the choreographer, the cinematographer, anybody who they represent as part of the package that they put together and deliver to the studio or the record company or the live event promoter. And the agency is getting a piece of everybody's salary, but they're also getting a commission on the package. So this is big. That's really the power in Hollywood these days. One can talk about studios and one can talk about record companies, but really any mega picture, any $100 million picture is going to be put together by a packaging agency. Okay. And those guys are deciding, they may not pick the people from the audition, but they're going to control who's in the room for it. Okay, so if 3 stars are being put up for that lead, they're going to try to make sure that every one of those is represented by their agency. If the director is not represented by their agency, and the director wants somebody else, then okay, that's an issue. I mean, again, we're talking Hollywood politics here. Okay, so Moira gets into this meeting with Mick, and it turns out that Mick represents a really famous pop singer, a Beyonce caliber pop singer. Now, I didn't study Beyonce for this. I did a lot of study on Cher.
I was going to say, did you study Beyonce?
Well, but Beyonce did go through a pregnancy recently, and she had to cancel some stuff. What's happened is that Mick's client has gotten inconveniently pregnant by somebody else's husband. She has to stay secret, but she's canceled her debut, her tour debut at the Mercedes-Benz Arena in Berlin, a 17,000 seat stadium. She's canceled that appearance 9 weeks ahead of the debut, ahead of opening night. Well, it takes time to put those concerts together. That's a big thing. Okay. And the other thing is that if the agency simply cancels, besides just refunding advance tickets, which get sold, months in advance, they're likely to be sued by the event promoters. Okay. The event promoters are high net worth investors who, it takes a lot of bucks and these are, if you've got, SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, the new SoFi Stadium seats 70,000 people, not 17.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you're talking about that being a sold out concert at whatever it is, a couple hundred a ticket. I mean, what they go for, but because I've been a while since I've actually, been to one.
They go for $2.
But we're talking big money here. So Mick is acutely aware of the fact that if they can't deliver on that opening night, they're in trouble. So Moira gets there, and he hints that, well, they've got some legal issues with this situation, and she thinks that she's there as an attorney.
Oh,
whereas
yeah, because that's her
the
day
interview's
job.
been set up because as a favor to this friend who says she can sing, and he says, well, and he thinks, your friend says you sing opera. He says, I'm really kind of intrigued. I don't really know that many people who studied at the Coburn or at the Juilliard. I understand you're that caliber. Why don't you just sing me some La Traviata or whatever it was she was singing for her. And so he says, Siri, play instrumental to the and it comes on the speakers in his office. And so she's all okay, I'll humor him, and she sings. And after that he says he thinks if she seems to have nerve. Okay, she's not afraid of stuff. Okay, if she just walks out on that stage, we're not going to get sued. Okay, we might get bad reviews. She might not have a career, but so he said, well, how about $1 million down and $1 million pay or play? Now, pay or play in Hollywood means whether the concert happens or not, you get the second $1 million. All right. So that's kind of a no risk, here's a chunk of change. She can always go back to being an attorney. It's only 9 weeks, right? So she takes the challenge. So that's the engine in this romantic comedy. And then, of course, because so many romantic comedies, and again, we're talking post Me Too, so many romantic comedies, it's the billionaire boyfriend. It's even a genre, right?
Yeah.
And so I made Brad a billionaire boyfriend, and she'd been dating him, but he's all about calling the shots. He's the one who set up the tennis match with the fellow billionaire, the guy whose portfolio he was trying to get, and he's the one who cares what she wears in public, and he kind of respects her career as a competent attorney, but he also realizes that she may not be doing or performing her heart's desire, but frankly, his preoccupation is with the fact that number one, she's absolutely gorgeous, and number two, at these charity events that he attends, that he may be a contributor to. On that red carpet, in the latest designer clothes, she looks pretty hot. So, whether we hook up permanently or not, this is a business asset right here. Emphasis on the asset. That's pretty cool. All right. So, here she is in the latest Vera Wang. Is it Vera Wang or Vera Wong? I don't remember. Okay. Last time I wore one, I don't remember.
It's been so long.
We're not going to get into that, are we? That's the third.
That was another time, another day.
So that's the fun of Mick and Moira and Brad, and it really comes down to, as you and I were talking a bit also in the green room, is not only post Me Too, but also in this barrage of social media. What does it mean to pretend to be someone you're not?
Right.
Now, that's exactly what Mick is asking her to do. Now, you didn't walk in here, you were dressed for court in a gray twin set, okay?
Yeah.
You look like business. You did not look like Beyonce. I need you to be Beyonce. And when you step out on that stage. So one of the things that she discovers is it's not yes, they write some songs for her. They do a lot of coverage, of course. But if you notice in a live concert, and again, as I say, I went back and I studied Cher's farewell tour. There's about 20 numbers in a major concert like that, okay, in a road show. more than half of those are coverage. Okay, they're songs other songwriters made famous, other songwriters, other stars did. There are oldies that the audience grew up with or dearly loves, and then there's 3 or 4 or 5 originals written for this singer, and maybe one that's absolutely brand new. It was either just released or it's going to be released post this concert after people realize that is a real showstopper. Okay, so yes, she's got to rehearse those songs. She's got to do those virtuously. But the two things that she realizes is, number one, she has as many meetings at the agency about building her brand. What should her image be? What should she wear? How are these sets going to be? What's the theme of the show? Well, we can't have you do Chiffon is the name of the star she's replacing. We can't do Chiffon's show because she's street and she's noir. Okay, she's crime rap. Okay, well, obviously your background is opera. Let's do Hollywood homage. Let's do Judy Garland. Let's do Liza. Let's do Dinah Shore. Let's do the old Nelson Riddle stuff, the Jackie Gleason Orchestra. Let's Linda Ronstadt did the oldies. That's a whole album was with Dinah Shore's orchestra, Nelson Riddle Orchestra.
Those are all awesome
oldies.
singers.
She
Like, people need to check
Nelson
these
Riddle
people out.
as a whole album.
They were awesome. All the people that you mentioned, Gerard, like, people need to go and check these people out because that was real music. I'm not knocking the music today, but I'm saying back then they had music where you could understand, you could actually connect with, there was a message in the music. The lyrics had a story.
The lyrics were poetry.
Yes.
Of a level. Now, it's interesting that, Dylan got the Nobel Prize for poetry. And one of the thoughts that I've had, and I'm not a huge Dylan fan. I certainly grew up with that music and I respect that artistry, but I've often thought that I would really love for somebody today to do Dylan coverage,
right?
With a kind of pop music, not raspy voice coverage, where I could really get into not only the melody but also what's being said, because yes, there was so much that was political, that was deeply emotional, that was controversial in what he was saying. And I hope we have a minute to come back to share. But the example that I want to give right now, again, with studying some of the older forms, was I really began to realize, and I think a lot of other fans did, just what a master Roy Orbison was. And they said that actually he was the rockabilly Caruso. He had an operatic range, all the way from baritone to alto, and even went up into the soprano range without singing falsetto, which was a big thing during there was a lot of male falsetto singing back then. But if you go back to his wonderful concert, the Black and White Night, that was done at the Ambassador Hotel, with a stage full of other rock legends, I mean, just amazing. Elvis Costello and Bonnie Raitt and Jennifer Warnes and Katie Lang and Tom Waits. And one of the things that you realize is on stage with him is Bruce Springsteen. And Springsteen is as much a star on that stage for his guitar, for his virtuosity on the guitar, because he's wailing right along. He and Orbison are standing together and they're both wailing on the guitars. They're both finger picking, like amazing. But the amazing thing about and Springsteen also sings. He does a couple of duets with Orbison. One of the things that's amazing, looking back historically, is that this was at right after a peak of Springsteen's career, and he was an R&B country star. And on stage there, he was wearing a silk suit, Tony Lama Western boots, his hair very carefully manicured. He was looking like a Hollywood leading man from the 1950s, okay, string tie. Right after that, and I did some research, right after that, it was Springsteen's career took a plunge. And he came back. His comeback was as the Vietnam War was heating up, and as there was a whole blue-collar revolt in the United States. Suddenly, his hair grew out and was tasseled. He had some growth of beard. He was dressing in a denim suit, and his voice had dropped a range. That Dylan gravel had come into Springsteen's voice, and it was part of his whole protest persona. Well, he became a much bigger name. He became iconic for that persona, but that was not the essence of Springsteen before his comeback. Now, you could say, I wasn't able to research deeply enough as to what was going on in Springsteen's life. I mean, did he go hippie sincerely, like, so many people did, or did his agent say, "Listen, Bruce, you've got to find something else"?
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, and again, we were talking before, playing somebody you're not. We were talking about Joaquin Phoenix in The Joker. Of course, that's not Joaquin Phoenix. He's an animal advocate. He's a pacifist. He's a vegan. We
were saying that before the show started, how much
they
really get into the roles, and it's scary sometimes. You're actually like, is that who that person really is? And they're the total opposite.
A relatively callow fellow, if you were to meet him, but he had to find that character in himself. That's not what the actors would call indication. That's not an imitation of a bad guy. That is some part of him. I mean, this is method acting, if you will. This is finding that part of yourself and this is why I say actors are among the humblest people in the world, because they know anybody can be anything. Anybody's capable of anything. So, which is why the people who play axe murderers, may have a nervous breakdown in rehearsal. They're just, they've got the courage to get down there. So, but what I wanted to say about Cher, because I really studied the YouTubes of the farewell tour. One of the things that Moira says to her, they give her a dancing coach, because she's got to do these dance numbers. She says, I don't dance. Well, her dance coach is and I told you, we spent some time in Kenya. Her dance coach is this tall, skinny African fellows descended from Maasai. Okay, and the Maasai are dancers also, and but also teaches at Juilliard. So he's going to be her dance coach. And she says, I don't dance. He says, that, my dear, is exactly what I want you to understand. You don't dance. And she says, well, I don't understand. Now, if you study Cher's flamenco number in the farewell tour, the platform raises her to up to like the second story above a descending staircase. Okay, so she's at the top. Follow spot on her. Suddenly, surrounding her are these ripped male dancers, all dressed in tight pants and flamenco style. Okay, and the flamenco number begins, and it becomes obvious that Cher is a dancer. I mean, she did dance numbers for sure, rather complex ones in her show. But in this number, it's step, step, stop, step, step, turn. She's coming down the stairs regally and elegantly, in this wonderful, period Spanish dress. Okay, made up gorgeous. But what the dance instructor tells Moira is, you are going to be constantly aware of the male lead dancer on your right. All the other dancers are following him. They're not following you. And if you step the wrong way, he will step the wrong way. The others will step the wrong way.
So step the wrong
And the audience will think everyone is following you. And you compare this to the flock of birds. You see the flock of birds, and there is no leader in the flock of birds that are flying in formation. Each bird is watching the other bird. Okay.
Well, it's almost like follow the leader, right? This one's over here.
Indeed.
And then we just follow.
And so this is part of the branding, if you will. This is part of the teaching her to be somebody she's not. So if we're going to come back to social media, if we're going to talk about how things have changed, I had an interviewer asked me the other day. Actually, it was an interview that we did from Moscow, which was all about cultural stuff. Okay, but the question, and guess what? I mean, they're doing social media like mad over there. The question was, is it ever okay to pretend you're somebody you're not? And what about Tinder? What about, you're posting, the picture you're posting is, okay, this isn't your age, or this isn't your birthday that you listed there, or these are the things that you think the other person thinks you would like to do, or that they would like to do. This persona that you've created, maybe that's not you.
Yeah.
And the point that I had is, get over it. This is Hollywood. There's not a single actor that sends out the headshot that was shot yesterday.
Exactly.
Okay. And the headshot is made up. Well, they actually, in actual auditions, the casting director, if anybody were ever to tell you, your agent is supposed to tell you, and especially for women, you are supposed to walk into that audition wearing no makeup whatsoever. They want to imagine painting your face. They know that they can put a wig or extensions on you. Okay. They will craft you into that brand of whatever it is the star must be in the script. But what they want to see is that essence of you that comes through in the audition. And they feel as though, I suppose you'd say the rationale is that that makeup, costuming, whatever, is a kind of a crutch. And they don't want to see you come. If you're going to play an older person, they don't want to see you hobble in with a cane.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, of course, there are famous Hollywood stories about actors who did dress and made themselves up in the part and supposedly nailed it. So, but I would submit these are the exceptions that prove the rule. But yes, showbiz especially is all about crafting a persona that is not necessarily yourself. It's an extension of yourself, but it is. And as authors, I have found, yes, I can talk about amateur sleuth mysteries all day long, and I can tell you about the plot hooks in the Preacher Evan Wycliffe series. But what people really want to know about the guy who wrote that series is, you wrote this guy he's a Southern Baptist, but he's kind of an agnostic. He stares at in the book, he's staring in the mirror, and he's like, some morning, it's not like he's questioning whether there is a God, but he might really be questioning whether God's on his side or whether God is listening. Well, I submit to you, Billy Graham notwithstanding, there isn't a minister or a rabbi or a religious leader anywhere on the planet who doesn't have days of doubt. Okay. And so to the extent that we all do, to the extent that people know that about me. Now, I was raised as a Southern Baptist. I was, and my people were from Southern Missouri. They were basically farmers going back a couple of generations. I'm very much a city guy. I went to a Eastern liberal, little Ivy League college where actually it was all men the last year I was there. I thought it was going to be like a monastery, you know, I'd be hidden from temptation. Not, uh, didn't work.
Not.
Didn't work. And, you know, that was I'm dating myself, but that was the Vietnam War. You know, I studied in France for a year, picked up some broken French. And before I left, you know, we were all wearing, you know, blazers and striped ties. I come back and everybody's in torn jeans and, you know, tie-dyed shirts and their hair had grown. And you know, they're smoking weed. And it's like, this is not the college that I left. Yeah. Because see, actually that during that time, that was 1968. That was when there were student riots in Paris. I lived through that. I did not participate in them because it wasn't because I didn't identify with the people who were in the street. I didn't necessarily agree with violence, but I just selfishly didn't want my passport revoked. Yeah. Okay. So I witnessed all that, but I mean, that was a revolution of a different order. Okay. That student riot was not about the Vietnam War. You know, the French had gotten out of Indochina right before then. And basically there was a lot of anger with the Americans, like, what makes you think you can do any better? Okay, there was a lot of resentment there. I mean, it wasn't necessarily really popular to be an American there, although the old, by the way, our money's in your pocket kind of thing, that works. I mean, yeah. I had one book of traveler's checks when I went there, and that was my father's strict instruction: is you're not to spend a dime more than what's in that book. And actually, you know, the meals at the student restaurants cost the equivalent of 20 cents. So it was a time to be an impoverished student, if you will. And I did definitely have that experience. But no, the student rights in Paris were about very much what's going on in the university admissions controversy these days. Was even back then, that had been the tradition in the French university system, that the aristos, and the class divisions in France go back generations. You know, the landed gentry. I mean, those are the people that have the estates, the people with privilege, the people with money. And yeah, everybody knows that this particular family, and they're all written in a book someplace, they've got it, you know, they're just this side of royalty. Okay. Well, the students from those families typically would go right into the engineering program, for example. They would, I wouldn't say fake their way through, but they didn't necessarily have to work hard at university. They get out, and you know, suddenly they're a vice president at Peugeot. And that was the objection, was that they wanted college admissions to be more of a level playing field, more access for what they would call the proletariat, and for not only for the university demographics to open up, but for society to open up. And that was really the rebellion. It was really quite serious. And it was rooted in, yes, there was a very strong communist party in France that was associated with the labor movement, but also the students at the time they actually thought of themselves as anarchists. That would be the equivalent of extreme libertarians in our spectrum these days. Now, that's not a terribly practical way to be. It wasn't then, it isn't now. But you know, those debates are out of scope.
Well, you know, it's like the history is repeating itself, right? Like we said before the
yes,
show.
Of course.
You know, it's like, and I tell this all the time to everybody: pay attention to Hollywood, pay attention to the movies, because the movies have the messages. For some reason, they have the understanding. We were talking about this. If we're going to have an evolution, you know, is it going to, like, everything just going to shut down and we're going to just start all over? And I feel Miss Liz feels that there's going to be an evolution coming. You know, everything is just going to shut down and we're going to have a restart. And everybody that's not paying attention, they're paying attention to the trends and the little gadgets and all of that, are the ones that are going to miss the boat. Pay attention to the history, pay attention to what is repeating. Why is it repeating? And why are the technologies, the AIs and the chats bringing the history so quick? And I think that's what we're getting scared, is because it's happening so fast. It's like we're in this time warp where we're really just jumping through, right? And it's like the movies, the comedies, and the history. Like Jordan, you talked about all of the staff that it takes to make a movie, to make even writing a novel. You give it an empty page and you come out with the storyline, you come out with the screenwrite, you come out with the movie, the directions, and the team and the community. The social media, that's what it is. It's a community. If we don't stay connected and we don't get involved, we're going to miss that boat and we're going to be gone. And there's not going to be any understanding of what's coming next, and I think that's where the evolution is going to come in, and people are going to be afraid because it's going to happen so fast. It's going to be like a snap of a finger. It's just like light, camera, action. Let's go. And a lot of people that are not paying attention are going to be like, whoa, what did I miss? Yeah. Pay attention to Hollywood, as much as it's the makeup going. And like you said, when you go in for an audition, they want a blank slate. They want to know what they can work with. That's what the AI is doing as well. They want to know how much they can push the limit with us. They want to know how much they can work with us. And like with movies and romantic comedies, like you said, start with an argument. If you don't start with an argument, where do you go? Where can you get that little humor or joke or whatever? Jordan, during this hour, you shared so much information about the past and the history and all of that. And I want to thank you for sharing all of that and sharing this book. So everybody who wants to go and grab this book, let's get to where they can grab this book, because I know there it is. Because I know Gerard has to skip out. He's gonna leave me soon. So
mirror image. Let's see. We gotta get this. We gotta get this right.
But I really want to thank you for sharing that, Gerard, with us, and sharing the history of understanding the process of putting things together. There's so many steps that people don't pay attention to. And we started off the show with the strike, that's going on for the lower paying actors and all of that. So just go out and support, and understand, get involved. And that. So, Jordan,
you're so much fun, Liz. So much fun. And you're so, as always, you're so generous with your thoughts and your time. And yes, I think we could agree that storytelling builds community, and that's community. No matter what comes down, that's what we have. That's what nurtures us. That's what makes us as human beings. That's where our talents really are, is working together to do things, to solve things, to enjoy each other, because there ain't no fun all by yourself with
exactly
that doll in the corner. So thank you again.
Oh, not a problem. And I know you have to skip out because you have another interviews coming up. So
as I say in Hollywood, I've got a bigger name on the other line.
Right. And that's okay, because this little lady
no one bigger. No one bigger.
And I really enjoy having you come back, because it is your second time on Tea Time. So I really got to see where you were from the last time I see you.
Oh, well, next time we'll have to talk about that, because I know I said Orange Pico and that's the wrong answer.
No, that's not the wrong answer. But for you, it's a good one.
Thank you, Liz.
Not a problem. So again, everybody who would like to know more about Gerard's books and all of that, check out his website. It is listed there, geraldeverettjones.com. And I always love when my guests come back and give me an update in person, instead of me just doing a write-up on my page for all of you out there. I want to thank all the supporters and that who have tuned in and supported Miss Liz over the last year and the last 3 other seasons. If you want to see Gerard's other Tea Time, he was on season 3. And he spoke about the preacher. Let me just grab it here. Preacher Fakes a Miracle, I believe he was on in season 3. So we talked about the Preacher series, and he talked a little bit about that today on Tea Time. So I will be back at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with G. Scott Grams, who will be coming in and talking about being proud of yourself and just being a good leader. We're going to talk about a bunch of little different things in there. So tune in and join me at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, at 7 p.m. Tonight, I will have Michael Clark coming in, and he'll be talking about horror stories. So we're going to be all today in the United States of America. Miss Liz is in Canada, so we are in 2 countries. But today, all of my strong men are in the United States. So tune in, and I'll see you all at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the second tea time of July 27th.